welcome. Have you noticed that life seems to have stages? You know, when you're young, it's all about the friends and people moving in together, and then someone gets married and it seems like every other weekend you're going to another wedding. In comes the baby showers, and if you stick around long enough, you might even get invited to the divorce parties. Eventually comes the stage where your friends seem to be all getting aches and pains and knee replacements, surgeries, hip replacements, all followed by, well, the invitation to funerals. It's a reminder that life is a journey with different stages. But the question is, how inevitable are these stages? How much can our minds influence them? I don't know specifically what stage you're at in your life as you're listening, watching this, but if you're tired of feeling like your ailments can only get worse, you need to get curious, because our guest for the next 2 episodes is about to help you give your head a shake. Social psychologist Professor Ellen Langer, her groundbreaking research suggests that mindfulness can be the key to unlocking the healing power of our minds. In her new book, The Mindful Body, Dr. Langer challenges conventional wisdom to show how our thoughts and our perspective can profoundly shape our well-being. Well, that's where we're going over the next 2 episodes with Harvard Professor Dr. Ellen Langer, so stay tuned. Welcome to the Dov Baron Show. Come for the stories, stay for the learning. Join the movement of deeply curious learners by hitting the subscribe button now. Dov Baron Show is not just another podcast, it's your passport to unparalleled insights. Each episode features wisdom of global leaders, scientists, entertainers, philosophers, theologians, and journalists, from astronauts who've traveled the vastness of space to presidential candidates trying to make sense of the world on the brink. We dive deep into the most intriguing minds. For the next 2 episodes, our special guest stories and insights are going to captivate and inspire you. Hit the subscribe button now and become part of this global community today. Ladies and gentlemen, turn up the volume and help me to welcome returning champion, the mother of mindfulness, a multi-best-selling author whose new book is The Mindful Body, Thinking Our Way to Chronic Health. She has earned 3 distinguished scientific awards, the Guggenheim Fellowship, Liberty of Science, and Genius Award. She is one of the world's leading thinkers. Please put your hands together and help me to welcome Professor Ellen Langer. Welcome, Ellen.
Thank you, Dov. That's a beautiful introduction.
It's always great talking to you, love. I've not talked to you in so long, and I have to say, I have missed you. I really enjoyed our last conversation. It was great. So I'm really excited to get into this. Now, you may or may not remember from our last conversation, but my whole thing is around the emotional source code. So I want to start there, if I may, because I want to know, in the context of emotional source code, in the context of the foundation of your life, those formative years, what would I need to know about you in order to give the context that I need in order for us to really understand you and understand where you're coming from?
I am enormously fortunate. My parents were wonderfully supportive. In fact, my mother would have had me laminated if she could figure out how to. And so because they were so supportive, it allowed me to do things that might look to others as if I was taking risks, which to me never felt like risks, to grow up understanding that whatever happens has a side to it that's actually an advantage. So I remember even as a little kid, you would tell me about some problem and I'd say, oh, but why don't you look at it this way? And I've done that all my life. I've spent now the larger part of my career writing books, doing research to try to tell other people how to experience the good fortune that I've had. And it's interesting, Dov, it's almost, imagine that you're running against a rail and you keep scratching it, squeaking, and it's painful. All you need to do is move over a tiny bit, a half a foot, not go the miles that people think they have to go to make the changes to lead to the kind of life that they want. And so it's because it seems to me so easy if people will just accept some of the things that I and others are telling them, that virtually everything can be achieved without it being very hard. You know, it's interesting that I have a slide when I give these talks in person. And on the slide, it says virtually only because I'm an academic, but I really mean all of the ills we experience.
So use the scientific bias I just put in a bit. virtually when I actually know it's 100%.
I tell you and the millions of other people I've shared that with that I believe all of our ills, whether personal, professional, global, interpersonal, are a result of our mindlessness, which means that learning how to be more mindful can change all of the problems that we experience. And people need to understand, because I've been doing this for, over 45 years. And when I'm talking about mindfulness, it has nothing to do with meditation. Meditation is fine. It's just different. All right. Meditation is a practice, and that supposedly leads to post-meditative mindfulness. Mindfulness, as we study it, is more immediate.
I want to just interrupt you there for a minute because I want people to get that mindful is not meditation, because here's where the lines blur. Is it positive thinking? Because I think that's where a lot of people sort of end up thinking.
It's interesting because while I'm called the mother of mindfulness, I'm also called the mother of positive psychology. But it is the case. And imagine you have a way of looking at things that makes you miserable, angry, sad, or you can look at that same thing in a way that makes you satisfied, happy, serene. Why would you choose the former? So that you see things, can turn things around, can understand how even this seemingly awful thing might be the best thing in the world for you. You're naturally, at the end of this, going to end up happier. When people talk about being positive, when you're really positive, what we really mean by that, you're not being positive. If you acknowledge positive, that also means there's negative. That you can't be tall unless short has some meaning. This is just a way of being. And it comes about by recognizing that you don't know anything. This seems like an odd thing for me as a professor at Harvard to say, that none of us know anything. So let me tell you, many years ago, I was at a horse event. At this horse event, this man comes over to me and he says, well, I watch his horse for him because he wants to go and get his horse a hot dog. Well, as people might have surmised by all the academic awards that I've won, I know as well or better than anyone, horses don't eat meat. And I try to be nice. I say, sure, I'll watch your horse. He goes, gets the hot dog, comes back, and the horse ate it. Now, horses were taught don't eat meat, but the horse ate it. At that moment, I realized everything I thought I knew could be wrong. And what does it mean horses don't eat meat? How many horses were tested? How much meat was mixed with how much green, and so on and so forth. So much of what we know from science. But science only gives us probabilities. If you do a study and you find that there's a difference, the conclusion you draw from that is that if we were to do the exact same study again, which we could never do, we're likely to get this finding. That possibility is translated as an absolute. And that's what we're taught in school. Another example I've overused, but it's kind of fun. Dov, how much is 1 + 1?
I know the answer because I'm a fan of Ella Langer, so I know the answer. But I'll say 2 because I know that that's the answer is going to work here.
Well, this is the one thing everybody is sure that they know. But it turns out 1 + 1 is not always 2. The other day I asked ChatGPT, whatever number, 4 or 5, how much is 1 + 1? And it said 2. And I said, well, what else could it be? And it just kept saying 2. So for a moment, I was very excited, at least with respect to this one thing of being smarter than AI. If you were to add 1 wad of chewing gum plus 1 wad of chewing gum, 1 + 1 is 1. If you add 1 cloud plus 1 cloud, 1 + 1 is 1. If you add 1 pile of laundry plus 1 pile of laundry, 1 + 1 is 1. So in the real world, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 as or more often as it does. Now, imagine now that you know that, and right after we finish our 2 episodes, somebody comes up to you and says, Doug, how much is 1 + 1? You're not going to mindlessly say 2. You're going to pay some attention to the context, and then you're going to answer more judiciously, more mindfully. You're going to say it could be, and then you can answer 1, 2, or if some other number occurs to you. This uncertainty is what keeps us curious, is what makes everything interesting. Once you know that everything is always changing, that everything looks different from different perspectives, there's a way that everything is potentially new and exciting. And it also leads us to be kinder to people. Because if you and I are in a class as little kids, as would happen, not infrequently, I think, and the teacher says, how much is 1 plus 1? And little dog says 1. The teacher is going to disparage you. All the other kids are going to now look at you as if you're stupid because of the cue from the teacher. In the world that I'm trying to create, the teacher would say to you, well, how do you come to that, dog? And then you'd say that you added 1 watt of chewing gum to 1 watt of chewing gum. So 1 plus 1 is 1.
Yeah, so it's very interesting because, I talked about before, my religion is curiosity.
Let me interrupt you for a second because I use the word curious as well. Mindfulness isn't curiosity. Curiosity implies that there's a right answer. So if I spilled hot chocolate on a newspaper and I'm trying to read a sentence, I say, could be an N, could be an R. The implication is that it is an N or an R. That the final answer, when you resolve your curiosity, is some absolute. And we can call this, in some sense, an endless curiosity.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. So the distinction I would put in my definition of curiosity is people say, so it's like looking for your way. And I'm like, absolutely not. And they go, what do you mean? And they go, because that kind of curiosity implies an answer. And what my curiosity implies is a deeper curiosity. So it's always, well, that's interesting, but tell me more about that. Well, wow. So tell me more about that. To me, curiosity is life's blood, and everything that gets in our way is the conclusion. And so this is the reason that as a polymath, some of my friends are theologians and many of my friends are scientists, and I can have the same conversation with both of them without a problem. It doesn't occur as a problem because we have to deepen this. And I love what you said, Ellen, because this is the key to kindness, and people don't quite get that. It's not about you being nice. I don't give a shit about you being nice. Don't ever insult me and tell me I'm nice. Like, tell me I'm kind. I appreciate that, because it's kindness. It's not nice. You've got something I don't even understand yet. Let me go there with you. Let me explore with you. It's an adventure.
I've been doing this for so long, and we have so many findings that are really quite remarkable. We have people living longer, seeing better, and so on. But the one thing that I came up with after all these years that was most important to me was the very simple understanding that behavior makes sense from the actor's perspective, or else he wouldn't do it. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, today I'm going to be clumsy. So when they're acting that way, why? Well, it turns out that if you just ask yourself, what sense does this behavior make from the other person's perspective? We go from an insulting way of understanding. You might not like me because I'm so gullible. But from my perspective, I'm being trusting. And I can't bear you because you're so inconsistent. But from your perspective, you're being flexible. And it turns out every single description we have of behavior has an equally strong positive and negative interpretation. So we did this thing many years ago that was fun. We gave people, I don't remember, it was 100, 200, or 300 of these behavior descriptions. And we said, circle those things about yourself that you keep trying to change and you fail. So for me, I'd circle gullible, impulsive. I won't tell you the rest. Then you turn the sheet over, and all of these in a random order appear the other side of it. Now the question to people is, circle those things you really value about yourself. And to me, it's being trusting and spontaneous. As long as I value being trusting, I'm going to be gullible. As long as I value being spontaneous, I'm going to be impulsive. So now you and I are together and you're trying to change me. If you want me not to be gullible, since from my perspective, I'm not being gullible, what you want to do is get me to stop valuing being trusting. But my guess is you won't want to change me anymore. Even when we're talking about alcoholism, they tried to get an alcoholic to stop drinking by telling them the damage they're doing to their liver. Well, nobody is drinking in order to damage their liver. So unless you get to the reason why it's happening, you're not going to be able to make the change.
I think you're absolutely correct, because as I say, all people's behavior makes perfect sense to them, and they have a reason that you've not bothered to find yet. And it's not the reason you're making up, it's some other reason that matters to them, because everybody is meaning driven. And so everybody finds their own meaning, and that meaning matters enough that they're willing to do this thing that seems to you pretty stupid, but to them doesn't. That's the key. And that gives us a level of compassion with people that we don't normally have. So in the context of mindful body, is there a classification? Is there a way of breaking it away from placebo, nocebo?
There are several parts to this book, but one that may be surprising to people if I get a chance to talk about the research is the idea of mind-body unity. Everybody believes you have a mind, you have a body, and when you conceive of people this way, then the question is, how do you get from this fuzzy thing called a thought to something material called the body? And it was important to recognize that these are just words. And if we put the mind and body back together and see it as a single unit, then wherever you put the mind, you're necessarily putting the body. That means every thought you have is affecting your health. Every move you make is affecting your mind, and so on. And so we've done studies now for the last 4 decades to show the control we actually have over our lives that goes so far beyond what people think. I have colleagues doing wonderful work where people have a problem, and psychologists and researchers, very smart, wonderful people, tell you how to fix the problem. The large majority of people are not living the lives they should be living, which is better than that better. Let me tell you something I ask my students. How far is it humanly possible to run? Now, these are Harvard kids, so they think marathon 26 miles, so they know it couldn't be 26 miles, right? So they start 28, 30, then it becomes like an auction, 35, 38, 50, and somebody says 50 and everybody groans, like, how could it be 50? Then I turn on a video of the Tarahumara, which is a tribe in Mexico, Copper Canyon, Mexico. These people can run 200 miles without stopping. By analogy, the difference between 50, and most of us wouldn't have thought we could run 50. I don't know, I can't run a 5 mile, but wherever you start, we'll say maximum is 50, that your life should be lived at least 200. That's the difference between where we are and I believe where we can get, both with respect to our health, with our well-being in general.
To all the research that you conducted, what was the data that showed up that was most surprising for you?
But it's interesting because it's not that I run a study and then I'm surprised, because I wouldn't run the study if I didn't think it was going to work in the first place. But for me, the one that I think has carried the most weight or what have you is the original counterclockwise study. And I know the study is important because if you watch The Simpsons Go to Havana, they actually talk about it. Okay, so it's out there. So we retrofitted a retreat to 20 years earlier, and we had elderly men, people with a lot of life experience, about 80, 90 years old, live there for a week as if they were their younger self. So we put their minds back in time. Everything suggested it was 20 years earlier. We had them dealing with past events as current events as if they were just unfolding and so on. In a period of time as short as 1 week, their hearing improved, their vision improved, their memory, their strength, and they looked noticeably younger. Now, I don't know about you, but I ran that study decades ago and still have never heard of an elderly person's hearing improving without medical intervention, nor their eyesight and so on. So that was the first of these mind-body unity studies, which we then continued. The very last one we did is kind of fun. We inflict a wound, not a big wound because I'm not a sadist, and even if I were, I don't think the powers that be would let me do it. But it's a wound. It's still a wound. And we have them in front of a clock. Unbeknownst to them, the clock is rigged. So for a third of the people, the clock is going twice as fast as real time. For a third of the people, the clock is going half as fast as real time. For a third of the people, it's real time. The question we're asking is, will that wound heal based on time, which is what everybody would assume, or based on the perception of time? And it turned out it was the perception of time, that we're able to control even healing. Now, if we go back to what I said before, where science only gives us probabilities, that means all of medical science is only giving us probabilities. So you go to a doctor and you have some ailment, you break your arm. I don't know how long it takes for a broken arm to heal, but let's say for argument's sake, the doctor tells you it takes 2 months. It doesn't take everybody 2 months, And so we're doing some work now where we have the doctors give the very quickest time they know of. rather than the average of a longest healing time.
So instead of saying it takes 2 months to heal, they're saying there are people who heal a month. Could be a little bit longer. Many people heal a month.
Yeah, we have studies with people who have diabetes, and it's the same clock manipulation where we find that their blood sugar level, again, follows perceived time. We have people in a sleep lab. They wake up and they see the clock says they got 2 hours more sleep than they got, 2 hours fewer, or the amount of sleep that they got. And again, biological and cognitive functions follow perceived amount of sleep. Let me tell you a funny thing, because fatigue, I'm suggesting, is a psychological construct. Now, this one's hard for people to wrap their heads around. What? You know, when you get tired, the whole body is, I'm saying the whole body and the mind, this is all one single unit. So there was a wonderful study that Frank Beach did in the 80s. He took a little boy rat and a little girl rat, and they would copulate until the little boy rat exhausted. He needs a refractory period. And this is always the case with little boy rats or little boys, men, right? They need a refractory period. Now what he found is, so the little girl rat, little boy rat copulate, the little boy rat's exhausted. If you immediately introduce a new little girl rat, he's ready to go again. So that as soon as you change the context, we have renewed energy.
So the context certainly could be time, in the context of what you're talking about with humans, but the context is simply whatever the context is.
Exactly. Well, so imagine that you're at work, word processing all day, and you're exhausted, right? And then you go home, and what do you do for entertainment? You play the piano. But the context, the way it's framed, what it means to you is something quite different.
Well, I think that at a very simple level, there are people who go to work all day and work on computers and do all kinds of things on their computer, and then they go home exhausted from work and then sit at their computer and work on a document, that they want to do, on a book or whatever it is. Because there's a psychological shift in how you feel, this is a keyword, how you feel about the thing you're doing. And I think that this is so important for us to understand. Dr. Bruce Lipton's work around this is fascinating stuff as well, is that we are impacting our reality as much as our reality is impacting us.
Yeah, we're actually in complete control. Social psychologists are fond of saying that behavior is context dependent. So that if you're at a football game, you're cheering and yelling. If you're at a hospital, you're quiet, and so on. The point that I raise is for people to understand that they can control the context. So the example I use in the book, my mother was dying, had breast cancer that had now metastasized to her pancreas, which is the end game. So I go to visit her, and they have rules. In the hospital, the context is you visit the hours they say you can visit, and then you leave. Well, I had two different contexts to be concerned with. One was my relationship with my mother. The other was the hospital. I really didn't give a damn about the hospital rules, to be honest. If my mother wanted me to stay, I was going to stay. And I made an announcement to them. I said, you can fight with me each time. You can look the other way. We can do this however you want to do it. But if she wants me to stay past 7 o'clock, I'm staying. Now that I mentioned the thing with my mother, let me tell you the end of that story. So the cancer had metastasized to her pancreas. That's the end game. Most people know that. All right. The hospital presumed that. So they no longer gave her any exercise or whatever because she was going to die very soon. Then magically it was completely gone. And the medical world couldn't explain it. And the mind-body unity explanation actually does explain it. But people should realize that spontaneous remissions are probably not nearly as infrequent as people assume. So the example I use, I'm in the hospital, I'm dying. Send me home. I want to die in my own bed. Why people care about what bed they're in when they die, I don't know, but people seem to. Right? So I'm going to go home and die in my own bed. And now, all of a sudden, I'm fine. It wouldn't occur to me to call the doctor and say, ha, you were wrong. They don't know about those spontaneous remissions. There are people who live in places where it's not so easy to get to a hospital. So they never get there in the first place. And we don't know how many tumors they've had that have gone away on their own and so on. In other words, spontaneous remissions may be more frequent than people assume. And that when you're given a death sentence by people in the medical world, it's important to remember two things. The first, that these spontaneous remissions could occur. The second is they're only dealing with probability. I was talking to a friend right before I started talking to you about a doctor who told somebody that their son is going to die very shortly. Now, they can't know that. And they should never give that information because it can easily become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, people used to laugh at this idea of, quote, witch doctors who would point the bone and say, you're going to die, or point the bone and say, you're going to develop whatever it is. And they would. And people would laugh at it and say how naive, it was just a belief system. Well, what the hell's the difference between that and your doctor saying you're going to die in 3 months, and people die on the dot 3 months, and other people completely recover or last 3 more years? Whatever the difference is, this idea of the gods in white coats is crazy, but we do it.
I've been surprised with all the lectures I've been giving lately that for several of them, there have been a lot of doctors present. And I thought, I found out afterwards, so they can come after me. How do they feel about this? And they're thrilled because they know they don't know. So it's a relief. And what we need to do is partner in our own healthcare rather than just turn ourselves over.
But at that egoic level, particularly if you've been highly trained and you spend a lot of money and time and energy investing in that identity of being that expert, that can be a very difficult pill to swallow, to say, I might not know. It can be very challenging for people. And this is where science becomes a religion. And the whole principle of science is skepticism. That's not being negative. It's about being, okay, well, I don't know yet. What we don't know yet.
Yeah. There's some interesting research with rats. I don't know a lot of rat research. I've only told you about a few studies. So it's odd that this would also be about rats. But if you take a rat and you just hold it in your hand, at some point the rat is going to give up. Now, if you put that rat in ice water, it will die almost instantly. Whereas if you take a rat and you put it in ice water without giving it that chance to give up, it'll swim for 40 hours, which is good or bad, depending on whether you then take it out. But when they do an autopsy, it turns out that the rat died a parasympathetic death. And what that means is a peaceful death.
Wow.
And what that means is the rat just gave up. If rats have this control, you can imagine how much more control we as humans have.
Fascinating. Fascinating. We're already at the end of part 1 of the conversation. Alan, it's been amazing. It always is talking to you. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared. I'm going to come back in just a few moments, 1 click away from part 2 of the show. But I want to make sure that people know how to find you or find out more about your book. I know you have an enormous amount of resources. So please tell people how they can find out more about you.
I'm told that if you just put my name in Google or whatever search engine you use, lots of things come up. I also have a website on ellenlanger.me. That's probably the best way.
Okay, we will make sure that all the links to all the different places you can find Ellen, you can find out about her book, where to get it, and of course, all of her resources. We'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes. So stay curious, my friends, stay curious, and really begin to wonder, for part 2 of the show, how much of your reality have you just given over to some authority figure, whoever they may be? How much of your reality have you given over to an authority? What would happen if you decided you were the authority of your life? Stay curious, my friends. Stay curious. We're going to be back in just 1 click.